Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How Come. Today's guest is Kristofer Thomas, who is a comedian, actor, and screenwriter. And we cover so many topics. It's mostly about how surgery or transitioning can really help you in life, why, how it could be wrong for you, what transitioning is for different ages, all that good stuff. And then, of course, orgasms. Hope you enjoy.
How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz.
Welcome, Kristofer.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I know you best from Twitter.
Yes. Yeah.
Which has now passed away.
It's so crazy. It's like a weird graveyard on there now.
Yeah. Pre-Twitter death, you tweeted something that I was very moved by and just so interested by, that you had such a hard time quitting cigarettes and like really didn't intend to until you got the okay from your doctor that it was like, hey, we have room to do top surgery finally, and it's going to be in a month and you have to go cold turkey. And in the tweet you said, and I stopped.
Yeah. So basically that's what happened. I'd always smoked. I also have ADHD, which kind of made it worse in college, and then I switched to like juuling, but I was just constantly trying to quit smoking, trying to quit juuling, whatever. And I just couldn't bring myself to like actually care enough to do it, I guess, I think is really what it was.
Yeah.
Like, you try all of the gums and whatever, the patches, blah, blah, blah. But I think if you have to kind of mentally unlock that. And I'd known that I had to quit before surgery for a long time, but I didn't have a concrete surgery date and it just felt so hopeless and far away. So I got this call, from my surgeon being like, hey, I can fit you in 2 weeks. But you have to like stop today. And I just stopped because I was just so excited and I needed that so badly. And so I didn't even experience any symptoms really. Like I had maybe a slight headache day 2, but I was so excited
that it was happening.
That it was happening. My whole body was like vibrating. I was so excited.
Yeah.
And it's been 7 months and I haven't, had a craving.
It's amazing.
Thank you. And it was a pretty good, the tweet you're referencing for people who haven't seen it. I made the thread in response to a bunch of these stupid posts I'd seen that day about, like trans surgery and how butchering and dangerous it is and how it alters people. And I was like, that surgery was so like I could physically feel how important that was to me. Like my brain could tell me because I was just flooded with,
serotonin.
Serotonin and whatever receptor shoots out don't smoke juice. You know what I mean? Whatever that was. Whatever it was, it was like, it was a full body experience, which is sort of the language I'm using here. I see how it's not unrelated to the theme of this podcast, kind of.
I think it is a full, I mean, it's full body in the way that like, I think we talked about it in a really early episode because I got like a tantric massage. And part of what I loved about that massage is the practitioner was touching like my vulva just as he was touching the rest of my body. And it just felt like it was like a part of my body for the first time instead of just like this other thing. So I feel like that experience of like just feeling like a complete body and like this is what you were seeking to feel completion.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's similarly also very psychological in the same way that, an orgasm can be. It's like you really have to uncheck and or check the box in your head.
Yeah, for sure. And I forgot that it was in response to that kind of stuff, but I'm not surprised because that's been like a huge discourse on the internet of like, it's unhealthy and they use the word, you're mutilating people.
Yeah.
Which I take a really big issue because I'm like, do you think that way about any other surgery?
It's interesting. Yeah.
Like, if you do, like my brother rejected my nose jobs when I was like, I'm getting them. He was like, no, you're mutilating yours, like,
yeah,
so
right.
If he were to say something about surgeries, it would be one thing. But I think for the most part, these are people who have backed boob jobs, they've backed nose jobs, they back Botox, they back hair transplants,
totally.
which are all surgeries that are gender affirming. They just happen to be for cis people.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. So many procedures are gender affirming. I've met a lot of cis men, even on small things. Like I've met a lot of cis men on testosterone for whatever reason. So yeah.
Or gynecomastia is like a condition where like cis men will grow breasts, and people are A-okay with that top surgery because it fits into the binary that they've grown up with and that they see as like the right thing to do.
Totally, yeah.
But I just loved this perspective because if we're really talking about health, and we talk a lot about this on my other podcast, Diet Starts Tomorrow, people will always be like, you're fat, you're unhealthy, you're doing this, you're unhealthy. And I'm like, do you hold the same anger towards smoking?
Yeah, right.
And because that is something that is patently unhealthy. And some people do. Like we did an entire episode on vaping and how hard it's been to try and quit for us. And people are like, you're pushing vaping. It's like, no. We're talking about the struggles of addiction and oral fixation and all that stuff. But your tweet, I was like, this just so perfectly demonstrates how something that I find gender affirming care very healthy, like you said, it lifted your mood entirely,
changed my life. Yeah.
And then on another level, it saved you from an addiction that is patently unhealthy.
Just like objectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's unreal. And so it's been 7 months that you are post-op.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How long had you been thinking about it pre-op?
That's a great question. Years. Yeah, years. Pretty much ever since I came out, which was, but yeah, before, well, I was thinking about it before that, but like thinking about it in a public way, like, looking into it and reaching out to doctors and friends, at least a couple of years. Yeah. Just getting, money together and making it all happen, getting the stupid letters and everything. It takes forever, but it had been a while. Yeah.
And I think that's a part of it that people don't think about either, is like how much people are not just wanting to do it for such a long time, but researching and looking into it.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a lot of talking points that it's like, you're trying to make the kids gay and you're trying to make the kids trans and stuff. And like, you were even saying like, when I came out, but then you're like, but actually, like it was way before that, it was probably before it was even a talking point at all, before you knew it was an option even.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like to ask this question because I think it's a two-parter. When did you come out to yourself? And then when did you come out publicly, at least for the first time, because it has to happen a lot?
Yeah. Okay, I think coming out to myself was like a multi-stage process. I think I came out to myself sometime in college. But, actually acknowledging that, it's a murkier timeline. I know that I came out publicly on Twitter, actually. I think I made a silly little post. I remember I took a selfie, like a self-timer photo in my parents' kitchen. This was a pandemic. And I posted and I was like, I'm a man. And I was just sort of saying it out loud for the first time. Spoke to myself too, kind of. That was June of 2020.
Wow.
Yeah, it had been floating around in there.
Wow, so like 3 years.
For, again, a while, but yeah, 3 years. And that was pretty much, I think when I finally did say it, I was ready. Like that was, you know what I mean? It had been building and building for so long. I didn't have I think I'd been using they them pronouns for a while and kind of playing around with that language, but I didn't have, I didn't really come out as, it was one and done. I was like, yep, I'm a man. This is it now. This is it for me.
Was coming out as they, them any more difficult or easier?
I think for me, I was sort of like, oh, you can use these, whatever, I'm cool.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a lot of, trans and gender queer friends. So I think I was kind of like, I slowly just sort of melted into that, I was like, yeah, and me. And then of course I quickly was like, they feel wrong as well. Mm-hmm. But I didn't, I think I was just scared.
Acknowledging that I feel is scary.
Yeah, it was scary. So when I did bite the bullet, it was much scarier, I guess, to answer your question. No, it didn't. But I think it would have if that was my thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it didn't feel scary because I knew that the real thing was coming, kind of. The real beast. Yeah. I was like, right. I think if I was non-binary or was someone who used they, I would have had, those feelings about that. Yeah. Whew, what a time. Yeah.
I know.
Crazy stuff.
No, but amazing too.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
They call it growing pains because it hurts.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So when you were like little, had you ever asked your parents like to dress differently or to cut your hair differently or to even call you a different name?
I didn't really think about gender until I hit like 13, 14, because I was sort of this, I wore like, Crocs and these matching tracksuits every day for like 10 years. I was just not really, I was like a beanpole with like a cloud of frizzy hair. And I kind of just orbited in my own little universe, like I bred fish. Like, I don't know what was going on, but I was just kind of, I was doing my own thing.
I love that.
Yeah. I went by a bunch of different nicknames, weird little nicknames with my weird little friends. And that was enough for me. And, I didn't know what trans men were until I saw like Jazz Bono on the cover of People magazine at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I was like, Mom, who is that? She was like, oh, that's the whole thing. You don't want to get into that. And I was like,
no, but I do.
Yeah. And
you're like, I might want to get into that.
I'm interested.
Right. I was just like, wow, Jazz, look at you. And then I hit, 13 or 14 and everyone was like, you're becoming a young woman. And I was like, Yeah, I had a very weird high school experience. A lot of baggy clothing, didn't cut my hair, but I think I wanted to, eating disorder, really, really thin, really wanted to kind of just be androgynous.
For sure. Yes.
And
as little hips and boobs as possible.
Right. I was like, fuck that. Which is not, I would say a typical.
Again, not healthy.
Right. Yeah. Not like healthy.
A way less healthy response than becoming yourself.
Yeah. I also, similar to kind of the smoking thing, I've talked to other trans men who had similar experiences, but I used to have a pretty intense eating disorder for like a decade. And I'd gotten it. I went to treatment for it, and it got better slightly, but it was just this difficult thing, And then I remember I came out, and it just went away.
Wow.
Yeah, it just went away. Not that that's like the prescriptive or the universal experience, but for me,
right,
it was so intimately wrapped up in not looking feminine. And then I came out, and it got better, and I started hormones, and it got a lot better, and it just sort of, that was it. Yeah.
How long after you came out did you start hormones?
So I was at home because of the pandemic, and that did not go so well for many reasons. So then I had to kind of wait until I moved back to the city.
Can I ask the reasons?
Yeah, sure. My parents really were not so on board.
Say less.
Yeah. I was very on board, but I think also part of my waiting internally, at least, holding back on coming out was I wanted to just come out and start hormones. Like, I was ready to go. I took my time and I let it brew. But yeah, they weren't so down for that. And so I moved back to the city. And then I think almost a year later, so like June 2021, I started hormones. So it's been 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so how does that work? Like, is it a shot?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Is it a pill? Is it a suppository? No.
It's a suppository. Yeah. I almost would say I'd love that. And I was like, I wouldn't love that. Actually, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I would not love that.
Nobody wants that. No, I'm sure some people would want that. I can't speak for everyone.
I actually, yeah. I'm sure there's a very select customer base for testosterone suppositories. Yeah. You can get apparently you can get an implant like similar to those birth control rods, but I'm like, I don't want.
Yeah.
It's a shot.
Got it.
It's a weekly shot. I take it weekly. You can do your dose and make it monthly or bi-weekly, depending. It just works for me. You can't take it in pill form, unfortunately.
And when you went to your doctor, what are the steps that they make you take? Do you just walk in and you're like, hey, I'm trans, give me some tea?
That would be awesome, yeah.
What's the tea? Give me the tea.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I love a good pie.
I can't help myself. It's disgusting.
Yeah. No, but it's like it's begging to be made puns out of. I actually went to like a virtual health service that's run by trans doctors, actually, because I didn't want to I didn't have a new primary care doctor at the time. And you have to either wait months to get into Planned Parenthood or go to your doctor and hope that they might not give it to you. They might make you go get a therapist and wait 6 months and have documented your dysphoria. They might make you get an official diagnosis of gender dysphoria. I luckily had been in therapy for, I'm still in therapy, but I had been in therapy and gotten the diagnosis and the letter. So I could kind of make the appointment with the telehealth service and say, you meet that. And they were like, okay.
They were like, you meet the criteria.
They were like,
we have enough information on you. You've been thinking about this for a long time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I actually, my pinned tweet is an essay I wrote about that day, starting testosterone, because it was kind of a wild goose chase and very emotional in a good way and a bad way, just based on my family stuff, but a good way overall.
Mm-hmm. I will post that on Threads so as to not force anyone
on Twitter. Yeah. I will be on Threads too.
And the essay was, you wrote it for what? School or?
No, I just wrote it just to sort of
just as a writer.
I'm actually working on, I'm developing a memoir proposal thingy. I'm working on a book, but it's funny to try to write a memoir when you're 25. I'm like, what the fuck do I have to say? That's particularly,
literally.
Right. What do I have to be profound about? Please, I have no
some stuff.
Doing, but yeah. Well,
I think some stuff.
Then I saw a tweet that made me feel better. Which was well, it's the best time to write a memoir because you can just process your life. And I was like, yeah.
Also, you can always write another one.
Right.
It's like a diary that's published.
Yeah. I just started keeping a diary, actually, like a journal.
It's fun, right?
Yeah. I'm not very good at it, I don't think. I know there's not a wrong way. Some people are that kind of person. There's a rare breed. Yeah. Not me.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to jump back to, you said you were kind of genderless anyway until 14.
Yeah.
And Robin and I just had a similar, Can you talk about your experience?
Yeah, no, I was talking to my mum about it the other day because gender's a nice conversation I like to have with her. It's always goes fun for me.
I getcha.
And I was saying that I felt like I was raised almost non-binary up until sort of 10, 11-ish because there was no gender for me. I was going to the skate park with my guy friends. I was walking around with no shirt on. I was, hanging out with boys. I was hanging out with girls. I was playing sports. It was never you have to play with Barbies or you have to play with monster trucks. It was just oh, that's Robin. That was what she's doing. And it just was.
Right.
And then I turned 10, 11 and I was starting, we have our middle school intermediate is when you're 11, 12, 13 sort of age. And it was only really at that point when I was going from primary school to that where it was okay, you're going to be you're a girl now. You're wearing a different kind of uniform. You're wearing culottes that look more like a skirt and you're going to wear a dress to your graduation. And I was like, I've never fucking worn a dress in my life. Why? What do you mean? You're telling me, I only just found out that I have to wear a shirt in public. What do you mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember. Yeah, totally. That's interesting. Yeah.
And so it was just like put on me. And I think also like what you were saying throughout high school, just finding that like I don't want to be like looked at. Me and my friends, like granted now, my nice little close friend group, we're all gay as anything. Should have seen it coming.
Right. Sure.
Mm-hmm. But like back then it was just like, I was like, I don't want to be doing my hair and my nails, and I'm not dressing for these boys. Like, I'm friends with the boys. We're playing football together. Like, why are you telling me one thing or another? Yeah. Like, it wasn't there for 10 years. And then all of a sudden they're like, this is now. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
This is who you are.
Yeah. And I'm like, but it can't be.
Absolutely.
You're just telling me that now.
It's like, I was not made aware. Yeah. I didn't agree to this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I think ever since I moved out and went traveling, and I was like, okay, I'm my own person. I've sort of like filled out into, I'm not living for what they said to me. Like, I don't see that. I'm like, clothes aren't gendered. Society puts gender on things that don't need to have it. I don't care if I'm not so much one for like pronouns these days. If someone said to me, like, a lot of the I'm working in a male industry again, and a lot of the guys will be like, oh, you're a right man. And then they'll be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're not a man. I'm like, I'm actually not asked.
You're like, don't worry.
I'm actually not asked.
Right.
It's all
like anything you want, like it's me. If I was on the rare occasion that if I was standing there in a dress, maybe don't be like, oh, he like, I don't know. Like, but like, I'm actually not asked.
Right.
I feel like it was just like put on me, and then it was like, yeah, your birth certificate says this, so that's what you got. And I'm like, but I didn't even choose that.
Right. And I had a completely opposite from both of you, because I was the first girl after two boys, and they were so excited for a girl.
Gotcha.
And I was so girled up, and my nickname was Pretty Remy. And a lot of people might say, oh my God, that's a wonderful nickname. And it's like, yeah, but what happens when like you're going through an awkward phase, or like you don't want that to be your whatever. And so now I have to think about it in terms of my parents too. Whenever I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, are we they? Are we he? Are we she? Or who are we? I have to be like, I have to figure out what I actually think. It can't be pushback against anything they've said. And I think that's why I see a lot of detransitioner videos coming across my TikTok timeline of people who have made, quote unquote, the wrong decision or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm curious about what you think about the detransitioning discourse.
Yeah. That is I feel like that could be its own like entire
episode.
Podcast. Right.
I know.
I'll say I found myself very often tossed in the middle of unsavory conversations about this, just because I have a large platform, and so people will take like photos of mine, and the next thing I know, some website is like, blah, blah, and I'm just trying to. So it's difficult to but overall, I think those folks, who detransitioned, I felt it wasn't right for them, get a ton of attention, like a ton of attention from people who are very not into people like me. And that's not great. And also most of those people, I think, are totally, maybe not the ones who are, online condemning trans people, but most of the small group of people who detransition are totally like normal people who just, felt it wasn't right for them. And so it's hard to not, like, I don't want to say anything negative about. Right.
A lot of the discourse is coming from outside of the community, where I've seen some really like wonderful people who have detransitioned, and they're just talking about their story of, this was a thing that I thought was for me. It turned out it's not. I don't judge anybody who's on their transitioning journey right now, because some people it really is right for. And to just put it in a, like, not that everyone transitioning is having surgery, but I think that's what the conservative viewpoint is worried about, is like, oh, like the surgery got fucked up. There's an entire show called Botched.
I know.
Where we're talking about surgeries that have gone wrong or whatever. And like sometimes surgeries do go wrong.
Right.
Some people will tell you my boob job, a cis person will tell you my boob job was the best idea of my life.
Right.
And then another one will say, this was the worst thing I ever did. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And so when I see people who are just honest about it and they're not condemning anybody else for their current journey, I'm like, that's a really great headspace.
Yeah. I have a friend, she's like a detransitioner. She just, it just wasn't for her. But we talk about this a lot because it's pretty infuriating to her, I think, to see, because most people who have detransitioned are like, a lot of it's for medical reasons, or like religious sometimes, or family reasons, what have you. There's a lot of that. And then there are also some of the people on social media, which is kind of, there are a bunch of like these grifter type people now. Like there's this one guy, he was kind of, at least on like the queer side of Twitter, like trans Twitter, everyone was talking about him. He was this trans guy who kind of was like, he made a bunch of these very, alarmist dog whistly videos on what happens to, a female on testosterone, whatever. And then basically everyone was asking if he was detransitioning, and he was like, well, no, because I feel like I might as well just stay this way. I was like, oh, so you're just looking for attention or something? Like, if you're not gonna, you're just a...
Well, also, you're trying to get attention from the people who hate trans people.
Yeah, it's very like
you're trying to get like a nice little pat on the head, like one of the good ones.
Right. He's like, right.
And it's like, yeah, I went through this, but like, I would never tell anybody else to. So like, you don't have to worry about me.
That's basically what his thing
like
was.
What you're saying, like, okay, so are you detransitioning? And he's like,
right.
No.
Right. Yeah. So there are people like that make it difficult. I think overall, that's kind of my overarching thoughts on, and what I would say, it just is the kind of thing where it doesn't even feel worth harping. But obviously anybody who wants to go on testosterone, I think, should be aware, of the fact that like some things might not be reversible the longer you're on it. But everybody who starts testosterone is aware of that and made aware of that. So it's like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that
they tell you your risks before any kind of medical stuff happens.
Yeah, it's funny when they should. And it's funny when I see people say like they just hand this stuff out. I'm like, it's pretty hard to get. Doctors are not keen on handing this out. It's even if you want to go to like a clinic, like a Planned Parenthood type thing. You're talking like months of waiting to get an appointment specifically for HRT, because you can't just walk in. You can't just walk in. You have to schedule it in advance.
What does HRT stand for?
Hormone replacement therapy. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, no. Okay. So I think that a common misconception is that when a kid comes out, the gender affirming care is medical transition or, like immediate HRT or immediate top surgery or,
Yeah.
And I think people would be better served realizing that gender affirming care is as simple as just being called the right pronouns sometimes.
Yeah.
Being allowed to wear clothes that you want to wear.
Yeah. For trans kids, transitioning is social. There's no child, like little child, that's on hormones, because kids, young adolescents, it's not until puberty where that maybe starts, coming into play. Do you go on blockers and wait till you're, 16, 17? Do you start at 15? Like, depends on when you start puberty. And then that becomes even like a topic of discussion. But before that, you don't have kids on hormones, because kids hormonally before puberty are pretty similar. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just
no, it could, or cutting your hair,
right?
These are all reversible things in case the kid wants to say, actually that didn't feel right for me. And I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast, and it's definitely not exactly the same. But when I was 7 years old, I met my cousin's babysitter, and her name was Kelly. And this woman was the most gorgeous woman on earth to me. And I was like, you guys, I'm changing my name to Kelly. Like, she's who I want to be.
Yeah.
This is going to be me now. And my parents were like, okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
They were like, we like the name that we chose for you. However, you seem really into Kelly right now.
Yeah.
And they were like, we'll call you Kelly. Sometimes like they would slip up and I would be like, who? And they'd be like, sorry, Kelly.
Right.
they would write Kelly on my lunch bags to go off to camp.
That's interesting.
And then I met a girl at camp named Kelly who sucked. And I was like, I'm done.
That's so funny.
This girl cannot remember choreography. She doesn't wipe her nose. I'm Remy again. You know?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good actually comparison, because children should just be allowed to experiment. I think parents don't realize when they push back so severely against, I've worked with kids a lot. I used to work at Problem School of Arts, and I tutor now sometimes in my spare time. Mm-hmm. But parents will often, I think, really freak out when their children are young and experimenting with names or pronouns or words like boy and girl, which are very interesting, I think, to a kid, but also not interesting at the same time. And it's like, it's not even necessarily that your child is trans. They might be, but it's always better to just let a child experiment with those things.
Yeah.
And because the more,
things.
Right. Yeah. And the more you push back against something, the weirder it's going to get and the harder it's going to get, I think.
Like, I had a Guns N' Roses phase. That's worse.
That's right. I'd much rather have my kid be trans than like Guns N' Roses. That's what I've been saying that for years.
Right? Axl, right. Not a good guy.
No, bad. I don't know people understand that. Yeah, no, totally.
Looking for a different paradise city.
Right.
Yeah, looking for euphoria.
Right, exactly. Right.
But yeah, I think they were easier on that than they have been for other things.
Oh yeah.
No, it's okay. But it's not okay. But it's,
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
It's just what it is.
Yeah. But it is nice in any respect to be supported by your parents. And like, I do understand that people project what their kids are going to be like. And so when people deviate from that in any way, they get like a little bristly.
Definitely.
But just seeing how this has changed your life for such the positive, it's like, how could anybody not support that?
Yeah, I think it's tricky with my parents. They've definitely, I think they didn't expect a couple of things. They didn't expect my extended family to be so cool. Everyone pretty much was like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then also like socially, their friends and our family friends, people didn't react well to them not reacting well. And that I think was very surprising. And and also like what you said, I think it was hard for them to kind of ignore the fact that I just undeniably was so happy and, well. And of course, they had very ridiculous concerns that are just about how I would look and how I would turn out. I think that they pictured I would not just look like a guy, but some kind of monster. I think that to them, this idea of me physically changing myself was crazy. And I did look. I looked totally different, obviously, but it was just impossible for them to conceive on that ground. On that level too.
Yeah, because they were probably like, but you're so pretty.
Yes.
Like, that's the thing that I've seen a lot of people, like, they get mad about trans people because they're like, but they were so good looking before. Like, how could you take the risk of not being good looking again? I have a friend who uses all the pronouns, but wants to be is a man.
Yeah, right.
Has publicly said on this podcast, will not medically transition because they identify with being attractive more, and they're just so scared of not being attractive. And it's like,
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think especially with trans masculine people, trans men, I see a lot of that, like this fear of looking ugly. And I think part of it is but I think it's different. Like, I don't think trans women need to have it's different. It's different. Estrogen's like the pretty hormone, and testosterone is this like big scary beast. And I think a lot of that's internalized transphobia. A lot of that's just fear. A lot of it's also that, men and women just look different. And just like, I think what I would say to someone like your friend is, what does being attractive mean? And I'd ask someone like that to define attractive, because I can remember having similar anxieties, but weirdly for me, I think once I came out and I remember actually agreeing with the idea that trans people who want to go on hormones, maybe should just try to come out first and see how it is, see how it goes, see what that's like. I can see that line of thinking, even though people should start when they want. I can see that line of thinking because it was very, really, really impactful for me to be navigating a world as a man who just looked like a woman. And just to be very clearly presenting to people like, no, I'm telling you this, I know you're seeing this, and just having to deal with that dichotomy, like having to process that reality was taught me pretty immediately, like, like any anxiety I had about hormones dissipated immediately. I was like, oh, I need that now.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, I no longer cared, the second it became clear I was not going to be able to be comfortable in the body that I was existing in. So, it's tricky. It's tricky, but I've heard things like that.
And I've seen transitions that are like, he looks different. Yeah. Because he's a guy now.
Right.
And like, if you are nervous about like getting body hair, you're going to get some maybe.
Right. Yeah. I also think that kind of ties back into the detrans thing, all of the, for some people also, I know some trans men who aren't on hormones, some trans masculine people who just like, that's not their thing. I'm like, it doesn't mean that you're not trans. It's sort of, you know what I mean? People can just exist as they are, but also if the only worry is that you'd be ugly. Yeah. Like maybe examine that, because it's ugly is sort of a perception,
it's subjective.
It's not a concrete like fact of,
unlearn all of those feelings.
Yes. I would too.
But I think a lot of them too, it's this worry of, I'm going to be a short guy.
Oh yeah.
And that was unacceptable.
Totally.
Or at least like how we've been raised of like, well, you wouldn't want a short guy. Like even last night I was watching Watch What Happens Live, and Andy Cohen's asking Luann which Bravo celebrities she'd hook up with. And she would look at the picture and he'd go, he's tall. And she'd go, oh, he's tall? Okay. And then the next picture she'd go, is he tall? And it's like, wait, does his face not matter? Like, does the chemistry not matter?
No, totally.
Are you thinking about what this person has done publicly on camera at all? It's just, is he tall?
Yeah, I think I'm lucky in that I'm 6'1", so I was always a freakishly tall woman, quote unquote. So I kind of got to skip that specific thing. Not that I didn't have other like whatevers. Like part of that came with being broader and like more figure that I had to kind of, everything has to trade off, blah blah. But I think the height thing is a big one. Just adjust a lot of the I'm worried I'm going to be ugly, I think also comes from adjusting to trans women experience this too, obviously. Like adjusting to a whole new set of beauty standards, like what makes someone attractive, as you're saying, as a man, as a woman, are completely different. And that's very like daunting if you've lived your life trying to,
be the other one.
Absolutely. So I think people can feel a little panicky. I feel in that regard, I often feel for trans women a lot of the time, because I'm like, there are so many things. All I really remember about like trying at least to be a girl, it's very hazy, honestly. The more I live, the less I really concretely even remember about what I was thinking or what I was doing. I obviously don't have amnesia about my life experiences, but just my feelings and stuff. But I remember there were so many little things that girls have to do, like so many little routines that I just was like, I don't know what the fuck is happening. I felt like being a guy, like styling yourself, for example, a lot of the time is like, put a pair of pants on, put a t-shirt on. Yeah. There's so many little rituals that
I always had the same feelings that I was like, oh my God, it sucks that we have to do all these things as a girl. Yeah. But then I'd always be like, ugh, but how much does it suck for boys that like, they can't really do that much.
Right.
And that's why I'm happy that like it's getting blown open more, that like anybody can do anything. It's not
right. Absolutely.
that deep.
Yeah.
But yes, the expectations and the society that we're steeped in say certain things.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to hormones for teenagers because that's where a lot of people get really, really mad, right?
Yeah.
Is
definitely.
They can never go back. Like, this was going to be a forever thing. And I'm like, okay, first of all, consider if that would be good for them. But also consider, I have several people that I know that went on human growth hormone as teens because they wanted to be taller.
Yeah.
Another thing that is irreversible.
That's yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And nobody had a problem with it. Everyone was like, yeah, tall. You want to be tall.
It's way more intense in many ways than testosterone.
This is not as extreme, but I grew up doing ballet and they told us they wanted us to be shorter. And I was like, okay, so me and my 9-year-old friends would drink a lot of black coffee.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Also not healthy.
Yeah.
But that's where I think beauty standards in general just prevent a lot of us from living our best lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I stopped thinking about it. Well, that's not true at all. Why the fuck I said that? I stopped. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Didn't stop thinking about it. I stopped, worrying, I guess, as actively. That's not true either. I try to care less. Say that.
That's all we can do is try to care less.
Yeah.
Don't let it ruin your day. And I'm never going to push my friend to transition more than they're comfortable with.
Yeah. No, totally.
But I do think that's maybe where a lot of people need to just start, whether they're trans or not. Is your value is not your face. It's not your height. Like, it's who you are. And like,
yeah. I definitely think that's true.
That being said, pretty privilege is real.
Oh yeah. 1,000%.
So a lot of the conversations too that I have been seeing recently, especially because we were recently talking about trans people in sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how usually the debate is always about trans women.
Yeah.
People don't really ever be like, oh, is it unfair to bring a trans man onto a team? Or is it unfair that this trans man is boxing? And I saw a really great TikTok of this woman who just like breaks it all down. I'll play it for the listeners.
Why are there no trans men fighting to be in men's sports? It's simple. Trans men aren't winning in men's sports.
Let me read this man. This is Patricio Manuel. He's a boxer and a transgender man who is currently undefeated. And yes, he competes against biological men. We have Kai Alums, a trans basketball player, Skylar Bailar, an NCAA Division I swimmer. Yes, he's a trans man. Chris Mosier, a transgender Hall of Fame triathlete. The list goes on, but I think you get what I'm saying. There are definitely trans men who play sports and who win. But the reason you don't see as many trans men as trans women in professional sports is simple. You see, transgender men take something called testosterone. And in a lot of professional sports, testosterone is seen as a performance enhancer. And if you take it, you're disqualified. And I don't know many trans people who would give up their life-saving HRT to play a sport. So that's why you mostly see trans men playing on the college or amateur level. But when it comes to transgender women, like myself, we take estrogen, and that is not a performance enhancer. Quite literally, it's the opposite. Taking estrogen actually decreases testosterone levels and decreases muscle mass, which is why you'll see more trans women in professional sports than trans men. But still, the numbers are very low. It is estimated that there are less than 150 transgender athletes in the United States right now. So when someone tells you that trans women are taking over sports, it's literally a myth. There is no takeover, babe. You may have heard of like 1 or 2 trans women who are doing very well and winning their competitions, but most trans women who play professional sports are not winning. Biological women are still very much taking home 99.9% of the trophies. All of this stupid controversy is literally just made up by politicians so they can get more votes. Leave trans people alone. Oh my God.
Like let people play in the sports that they want to play in. And then also, the bathroom debate. Everyone is always talking about trans women in bathrooms. But then all of these women now are so surprised if there's a ban in their state, that trans men are going to be using the same bathrooms.
I know, it's so like, I remember this moment when I started like passing in public, maybe a year and a half ago. I had been using the women's restroom because I didn't want to risk anything. Mm-hmm. And I went to walk into one at some bar, and this woman was like, whoa, like, this is the women's room. I was like, oh, like, okay. So, yeah, you know, and then I walked across the room to the other one. But I remember thinking like, oh, no one wants me in there.
Right.
And what am I going to do? Stand at the door and announce my assigned birth sex so everyone's chill? Like, you know, this is getting ridiculous. Yeah. And I was just thinking like, this is so ridiculous. Kind of the hard truth is like, no, and if someone wants to hurt you in the bathroom, they're going to walk in and hurt you. Like, it doesn't matter what they identify as or who they are.
100%.
If you're going to get attacked in the bathroom, which like, I hope nobody ever does again, like, you know, nothing's going to change.
Renan Hirschberg, who's a really, really funny comedian, has a joke that's like, yeah, because signs on doors are what stop sexual predators.
Right.
Like they're I really want to go in there and do a crime, but this says I need to be in a dress.
Right.
Like, that's not happening ever.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. It's just fear mongering. I mean, same thing with the sports thing. I'm like, the idea that a man would undergo like chemical feminizing, whatever, blah blah blah, just to like play women's volleyball, whatever it is. I'm like, you guys are insane. Do you think that's
absolutely not?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. I was like, have you people ever met a man? Like, oh yeah, it's all very silly. I also think all of this political stuff is just stupid. There aren't that many trans people. Like, there aren't that many. I know.
That's why, like, when we were talking about detransitioners, I was like, this is such a small percentage of such a small percentage.
I know. It's crazy to me. I'm like, the political headlines, you would think that we were swarming this. I'm like, most people have never seen a trans person, probably. Like, just based on numbers, you know, and where you are, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you some quick stats quickly.
Okay.
Detransitioning is quite rare. So some studies have shown that the levels of detransition and regret are as low as like 1 or 2%. There was a study of over 300 transgender youth. And after first initiating social transition, they found that over 92% of them remained consistent and persistent in their gender identity 5 years later, which is good. And there was one more. Good. I'm very good at stats, aren't I?
Yeah.
That a large majority of transgender adults in the US, 78% say living with a gender different from the one assigned to them at birth has made them more satisfied with their lives. And among those respondents, more than 3/4 had changed their clothing, hairstyle, grooming habits to align with their gender, and 31% had used hormone treatments. And then only 16% had actually done the proper surgical route. So there's quite a big proportion. It's just a social thing. A lot of it is sort of the
totally. Yeah, that's another thing with some of those detrans like figures. Some of them weren't really on hormones, or if they were, it was like for a week. And I'm like, why are you? Who cares? Like, why are you?
Try something.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, what axe do you have to grind here, right?
I mean, on antidepressants for like longer. Like, I'm still depressed. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, totally.
You tried something.
Yeah. Before we let you go, do you remember your first time coming?
Yes. It was sometime around 11 or 12. And I think like a stuffed animal was involved. And that's about what I recall. It was an interesting time. Yeah, I think that was it.
And are orgasms better post coming out?
Oh, yeah. I could never... I had a long period before I came out where like I was not... Actually, I think almost exclusively like my sex life before I came out. Like I was not... No one was allowed to touch me. Like I was very much... I am like a stone top. No one's going near me. And then that very much changed when I came out. So even that, like that alone, you know. But yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Love to hear it. This has been so fun. Thank you for sharing everything that you did with us.
Thanks for having me.
I have to ask this, of course. I have to ask this before we finish. I have to ask everybody after a sexual experience. This has been a little sexual. Kristofer Thomas, did you finish?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for coming.
Stop. Oh my God. I was like, wait, what is the setup? Oh my God.
What is this?
What is it going to be? No, I was waiting. I knew it was going to be a pun, and you satisfied me.
It wasn't going, but it was coming.
Thank you.
I'm so glad. I finished too. Rob, how about you? You done?
Oh yeah, I did.
Great.
And hopefully tonight too.
Oh my God, amazing.
Kristofer, where can everybody find you online?
It's just my name at Kristofer Thomas on everything.
Amazing. You can find me at Remy Casimir. Find us at How Come Podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe. And you guys, we'll see you next time. And we love you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
It's not you, it's me. I try so hard to finish honestly. They say you'll know when you go all the way from A right down to O. Oh no, I think that I've still got a ways to go. Oh, I'm sick of this and I have got to know. How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz.
Okay, so Kristofer mentioned this little piece that he wrote, which is so good that I just want to read it to you guys, but I think it's better to just read it yourselves in his voice. We're going to attach it below, but if we don't, because sometimes we forget, it's called Dad Used to Have Boobs and They Were Kind of Big. Yeah, just search it. And he basically goes more in depth on the first day that he used testosterone and the issues with insurance, alerting his parents about it and the problems that arose there. But then also this beautiful thing of basically for his future kid, I am doing this for you so that my body dysmorphia doesn't take away a second of our time together. And it's so good. And I highly recommend reading it, especially if you're somebody who's having similar feelings, or even if you're not, and you just want to understand a little bit deeper into his process and his timeline and his feelings. And it's just such a good read. And it's short. It's like 2 pages. You'll be able to do it. Okay, that's it. Rate, review, subscribe. Join patreon.com/howcome if you want to support the podcast or just get extra content. Thank you so much to our patrons who already do. We love ya.